Special. Here today is the City of Memphis's new Chief of Development and Infrastructure, John Zeanah. Welcome to A Better Memphis.
Thank you, Joe.
It's glad to have you here. Just 1 month ago today, on May 30th, Mayor Paul Young named you to this new position. You're tasked with a lot of jobs. Listen to this. You're overseeing 4 key departments: planning and development, engineering, housing and community development, which the mayor himself oversaw in the Strickland administration before Paul Young was elected mayor, and key community and economic development agencies associated with the city of Memphis. So how do you plan on huddling and getting all of these departments aligned, and you being the conductor, and we have a beautiful harmonious symphony of city services all working harmoniously?
It's a good question, Joe. So you used a good word as an analogy for what I'm doing. I'm a conductor. I'm working with the leaders of those divisions, whether they're division directors or agency heads, and helping to bring them to the same page about how we move forward a number of interconnected elements of our built environment. We learned this in not only the planning phase for our comprehensive plan, Memphis 3.0, but through some of the implementation that we've done of Memphis 3.0, especially around Accelerate Memphis, the value of having at the same table the folks who are planning, the folks who are building and doing, and the folks thinking about how our communities benefit from the work that we're doing in infrastructure. Ultimately, it's about bringing all those organizations together so that we make it easier to invest in our community, whether that's easier to get through the process, easier to work with the city in understanding how we give the necessary resources to support new investment in our community for new homes, new businesses. Ultimately, we need to be able to make our city more conducive to investment.
So just as a small example, if there was a small storefront business owner who was taking over a property, your team would try to expedite the process of permitting and allowing that business person, that entrepreneur, to get those doors open ASAP, right?
Certainly. There's a lot of different points in which that business owner is going to have to interact with the government. So our task is not necessarily to do something special to expedite for that individual, but to make the process and make the incentives such that it's understandable, it's clear, it's transparent. A business owner knows not only how to get through the process, but to be able to do it quickly so that they're able to get their doors open, start serving customers.
All right, today it was announced the City of Memphis is recognized as the 2025 All-American City by the National Civic League. This is the city's first comprehensive plan in nearly 40 years that was presented, and he's the Thomas Jefferson of the so-called Memphis 3.0 plan, which was highlighted in this recognition by the National Civic League for your service in figuring out a vision, figuring out a plan for our city to go forward so that everybody's singing from the same sheet of music as we continue this same musical analogy. What does this notability mean?
I think it's really special for our community to be recognized this way, because one of the things, or maybe perhaps the most important thing that was recognized by the National Civic League, was not just the plan itself, not just the breadth of the plan, but how much the community was involved in shaping the plan. I think your audience has probably heard many times that through the process of developing Memphis 3.0 up to when it was adopted in 2019, there were over 15,000 individual residents who participated in that. Since, our team has continued to engage community in not only the implementation of the plan, now we're conducting a 5-year update, so there's additional involvement from the community there. Over 70,000 Memphians have participated since we began this initiative 10 years ago. That's the type of inclusion into a planning process that the National Civic League recognized about what Memphis 3.0 has been able to do. But you mentioned something really important for this role, which is that we have a plan that looks at how we're investing in how the city grows going forward. And that investment is not only the investment that we need from the private sector to build new housing, new businesses, job centers, but the investment of the public sector that comes along with new investment from the private sector, so that we're supporting the types of growth and investment that we want not just for the short term, but for the long term. And that coordinated role is something that we gain by having those divisions and agencies that you talked about under one umbrella, under one roof of this role.
That's great. You know, I remember back in 2019, it felt like our city had momentum. It really did. It felt like all of these wheels were moving in the same direction, and then tragically COVID happened, and everybody in America got derailed, and the world got derailed by that. We saw St. Jude announce the gigantic expansions and huge investments. But beyond that, I mean, where do we stand? And I know you could probably write a book in response to this question, but in the plan, the Memphis 3.0, generally, where do we stand right now?
Sure. I want to go back to one thing you just said quickly about 2019. Over the last 12 months, Joe, we have seen more construction value invested in Memphis than any 12-month period prior.
Wow.
Over the last 12 months from today. That includes 2019. I know there's been inflation, but even adjusted for inflation, we're still outpacing where we were in 2019. Maybe what we don't see as much now that we saw then were a lot of the announcements of the things like the mixed use projects, the hotel projects, that sort of thing that really seemed to shape a lot of the vibe of our city changing. So we've seen a good bit of that progress. Coming out of 2019, there were a lot of those projects that still continued on. As we looked at and tracked how investment was coming in according to the targeted redevelopment areas of our city, we were seeing, as of 2022 was probably the high watermark, close to 70% of construction value was happening in the targeted redevelopment areas of our city. It's a little less now because we've seen more investment in like industrial areas, for example. But I think the thing that I want to leave you with and leave the viewers with is there is momentum that is building back in Memphis. And I think that stat about the amount of money that has been invested over the last 12 months is indicative that something's below the surface that's really moving forward. So we've seen implementation of the plan and investment from the plan, not just in construction value in those targeted redevelopment areas through Accelerate Memphis. The city's investment of $200 million into recommendations that came from Memphis 3.0, that came from the Parks Master Plan, that are invested in some of our citywide assets that everyone loves and enjoys. There's a lot to be really excited about in terms of our future and how our future of this city will grow following that plan. And I'm really fortunate to be a part of it.
Well, you're the conductor, so thank you so much for sharing just a few minutes with us today. John Zeanah, the new Chief of Development and Infrastructure, overseeing so many departments, will be wanting to check back with you as often as you're willing to share major progress as we go along. Thank you so much. All right, sir. Thank you.